Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. After a series of momentous decisions by the Uttarakhand High Court and the Supreme Court, a floor test will take place in the Uttarakhand Assembly tomorrow. But this evening, there are three questions that are crying out for answers. Is this an outcome, an embarrassment for the government and a victory for the Congress? Is the situation regarding the 9 MLAs still messy, and could it lead to further controversy? And who's likely to win tomorrow, and could we see more horse trading, possibly tonight before the floor test itself? My guests are Congress spokesperson and the winning lawyer Abhishek Singhvi, BJP leader Sudhanshu Mittal, the well-known Supreme Court lawyer Sanjay Hegde, the political editor of the Business Standard Aditi Phadnis, and the political editor of the Hindustan Times Vinod Sharma. So, Mr. Mittal, let's start with the decision to hold a floor test. This was one thing that your party and your central government was determined to avoid at all costs. Now that you've lost that battle, is this a slap on the face for the Modi government?
Mr. Thapar, the facts are to the contrary. It is only when the central government told the Supreme Court that it is willing to do that, that the Supreme Court passed an order to this effect. So saying that we lost it is a travesty of truth, I would call it, and justice. Now, one thing I still don't understand. The two sting operations which exposed how horse trading was being done by a Congress chief minister, caught on camera. The political morality, the probity, all that, that seems to have become a non-issue for the media and everybody. I'm aghast. Look, what is the state of democracy? That the chief minister is offering money to his own MLAs, and you have one who says 12 MLAs have been given 25 lakhs each, and one MLA is being given 50 lakh, and this is just the advance. 27 crore rupees have been collected from the mining mafia and the liquor mafia.
Okay.
All these things are on camera. The shifting stand of the Congress chief minister, who first said, no, this is a fake sting, and later said, yes, I was there, but I was joking. Can you imagine? These are the serious questions, and then somebody wants to put the central government into dock.
Okay,
I am amazed.
You raise a good point.
Congress had so much to answer.
You raise a good point. Let me put it to Sanjay Hegde, who can speak as a lawyer who's an independent. Should the Supreme Court have paid greater attention to these stings, and in particular the most recent sting? Or was the Supreme Court right to say, as the Uttarakhand High Court had said, that one sting on its own cannot be an instance of the collapse of constitutional rule?
See, the issue before the Supreme Court, firstly, was about the imposition of President's rule. And there it already had the judgment of the Uttarakhand High Court, and it's a question of, before the Supreme Court, whether to affirm that judgment or to set it aside. So far, it has not set it aside. Right now, before the Supreme Court, it has been agreed by both parties, Congress and BJP, that the floor test can go on. It's not as if the Supreme Court has imposed a floor test. This is something which has been done by agreement as an interim order. Mr. Singhvi is there, he will confirm.
Well, absolutely. But are you, before I go to Mr. Singhvi, therefore saying that the Supreme Court was right not to pay any attention to the stings, and that the issue of the stings should not have been a concern for the Supreme Court at this stage? Because what Mr. Mittal is raising, by implication, is that this is an issue the Supreme Court has ducked.
Mr. Mittal's party was heard. Right now, the Supreme Court is concerned at the interim stage as to what is to be done here on. It was not looking at the merits of each of the individual incidents which led to the final decision.
Abhishek Singhvi, you heard Sudhanshu Mittal say that to call this a victory for the Congress or a slap in the face for the Modi government is to misunderstand the situation, because the floor test, as he put it, is only happening because the government agreed to it and actually asked for it. So let me put the opposite question to you. Has Mr. Modi and the central government stooped to conquer?
You know, strange as it might sound, Karan, I agree with Sudhanshu Mittal, because but not for the reasons you and he think. Because he who laughs last, laughs longest. The ultimate laugh will have to be a political laugh, a numbers laugh, a majority laugh tomorrow. All of this we are doing, each one of us may look pretty foolish tomorrow if the numbers go this way or that way. And the political process must be allowed to work itself out tomorrow, as indeed the judicial process has worked itself out largely. So I would not say a slap in anybody's face at the moment, but if you now turn to the way in which Mr. Mittal is interpreting the judgment, let me tell you that you have to look at it in the terms of established law. There is never been in independent India this double whammy of a 356 imposed within 10 days to abort A governor's direct order to have a floor test on 28th of March, and B, to abort a 36-hour prior adjudication of a speaker on 9 disqualifications. If you look at those two facts, yes, it is a complete slap in the face of the central government, because A, it has never been done before, and B, the Uttarakhand High Court has confirmed that in very graphic and comprehensive terms. The Uttarakhand High Court judgment has not been set aside, and as we all know as lawyers and as non-lawyers, what happens on the lines is not as important as happened between the lines. In the court proceedings, although ultimately the central government agreed, it is, to be fair to everybody, and I think the AG was right, he was making a virtue out of necessity. Because, let me tell you, Karan, right from Rameshwar's
a virtue out of necessity, if I can interrupt, is not stooping to conquer. A virtue out of necessity is putting a brave face on a bad situation.
Karan,
I agree.
Very
If you put it like that, I agree.
While 356 has been
all
mentioned
judges
by
have held till now that a floor test is the only way. So that tomorrow if the floor test decides the matter, all of 356 becomes irrelevant.
At this moment, Vinod and Aditi, when for some reason that can be almost inexplicable, our two political opponents are actually agreeing with other, although they say they agree with each other for different reasons to each other, there is nonetheless a situation here which creates a certain potential of embarrassment, at least for two people. First, Vinod, what has happened is that the government chose to declare President's rule not only in defiance of the Boumai judgment, which clearly lays down when and how it should be done, but additionally, it declared it 24 hours before a floor test was scheduled to happen. By now turning that over on its head, is the PM reflected in a bad light? Because at the end of the day, this is a decision he has to carry the can for, and if the Supreme Court or the High Court turn it around, he's the one in the light.
Well, as is the old British dictum goes, the Prime Minister may not be accountable, but he's responsible, for certain decisions. And to that extent, I think the responsibility rests with the Prime Minister, because this was a decision of the Council of Ministers, and he's the first amongst the equal. But I wouldn't emphasize on that. My own personal take on this is that the mandate that originally brought the Congress government to power has been badly vitiated on account of shenanigans of the BJP and the Congress both.
You're talking of the mandate in Uttarakhand?
Yes, the mandate in Uttarakhand. And there is less than a year left to go to go for fresh elections. I think that any of the two parties which win tomorrow's trust vote should...
let's come to what happens at tomorrow's trust vote later. Let's for a moment stick to the political implications and consequences of what happened today. And I will come to the outcome of tomorrow and what it means. But you accept that this casts the Prime Minister in a bad light?
It casts the whole of the Council of Ministers in a bad light, because it was their decision to impose 356, because Governor had not recommended imposition of 356 in any of his 8 reports. Neither had he cited a breakdown of constitutional machinery, because a sting operation where a Chief Minister is shown as seeking to buy out MLAs does not amount to breakdown of constitutional machinery.
What about the President? It's well known that President Mukherjee signed the proclamation roughly 13, 14, 15 hours after he got it. Of that period, 9 at least were nighttime hours when he was asleep. He didn't do what President Narayanan did, which is to send it back for reconsideration. It was an option that was open. Does the President emerge in a bad light, particularly now that the implication is that the decision of President's rule was inopportune? There was an opportunity for a floor test, you didn't go through it, and now you're having to go through it.
Well, the President what could the President have done? He could at best have sent it back to the Cabinet for reconsideration.
It worked twice with President Narayanan.
So, the Cabinet might have sent it back to him again.
But might not
in
have.
Which case,
but might not have. And he would have raised a moral issue and indicated to the country that there is an issue of moral concern. None of those did he do. So I ask you, did he fail his duty to the Constitution by so readily agreeing to President's rule?
I think the President had a role to play, and he could have played it. But I think the much bigger responsibility rests with the government, both in the centre and in the state. Because frankly, this is a political failure of the Congress as much as it is of the BJP. Of the Congress, because 9 MLAs who need not have gone away were allowed to go away. You allowed fissures to develop. You had a perfectly stable, perfectly good government. If you're going to be a leader of a faction, then that doesn't make you a very good chief minister.
Let's come, Mr. Mittal, to the question of those 9 MLAs, forgive me, because that's another issue that is sharply in focus today. Your government had argued that in fact these 9 were not defectors, that they were simply opposed to Harish Rawat, not to the Congress, and therefore their disqualification should be stayed. Neither the Uttarakhand High Court nor the Supreme Court in appeal were willing to do that, and so their disqualification remains on the books. Is that another embarrassment for your side?
Can I come to the point? A lot of fallacious information has been passed. I want to correct a few things. The order of the High Court, so-called order of the High Court, which is so eloquent about condemnation to the central government, has been stayed. Let's not forget that. So it is not in operation. It is not an order which is in operation. So it is not a valid order. It has been stayed by the Supreme Court. One, we've all talked about the responsibility of the president and 356. Sir, I just want to read out 355 also. That will clarify what is the responsibility of whom. It says, it shall be the duty of the union to protect every state against external aggression and internal disturbance, and to ensure that the state or the government of each state is carried out in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. If buying and selling of MLAs is a part of the provision of the Constitution, that too being done by the Chief Minister himself, then I do not know. Otherwise, I think in 355, it is the constitutional responsibility of the central government to do what it did.
But
secondly,
come now to my point about the MLAs.
Giving money to MLAs, if giving money to MLAs to keep the flock together is constitutionally it's the right on part of the chief minister, then I have nothing to say.
But then what do you say?
One day before the floor test. Sir, if 2 days before the floor test.
Mittal Saab, what then do you say to the fact that the disqualification of the 9 MLAs has not been stayed, that the argument made by your side that they weren't defectors because they weren't breaking with Congress, they were only showing their opposition to Rawat, that argument hasn't been accepted. Is that not another slap in your face?
That argument, no, please again, notices have been issued. There has not been a stay order, there has not been a stay order. The court will adjudicate and court will decide whether they attract the 10th schedule or they were merely protesting against the Uttarakhand Chief Minister. You see, the problem
that's a good point you're making.
Has been the feudal mindset of not only Rahul Gandhi but also Harish Rawat. This has led to the revolt by the Congress MLAs. How do we come into the picture?
You make a good point which I want to put to Abhishek Singhvi. The point that you heard just now from in fact Mr. Mittal is that although the disqualification has not been stayed, the matter hasn't been adjudicated either. The Supreme Court has made it clear, and I believe on the 12th of July they will actually go into the merits of that disqualification, and arguably the disqualification then could be struck down. And if that happens, clearly you won't have won a clear victory. And therefore, even tonight on the issue of the 9 MLAs, it's not a clear outcome and not a perfect outcome by any means from your perspective.
Both arguments are untenable and legally wrong. The argument that it has not been adjudicated is wrong. The interim stay pressed for all of 2 hours today from 1 to 2 and 4 to 4:30 and a little more has been an adjudication rejecting the interim stay. Point number 1. So that's a full adjudication on the interim stay. 2. All that was relevant for now and perhaps forever is the interim stay as far as the 9 are concerned. If the vote is taken place tomorrow and a government is formed, the validity or otherwise of these 9 by July becomes largely irrelevant to the political reality. 3. The entire argument of the 9
contestable,
is
and I'll tell you in a moment's time why, but
that they
carry
are
on.
not defected, they are well within, and therefore, no, let me just complete. And the third point is that it is completely wrong to suppose that 356 is a central government panacea for misgovernance, for bad governance, for corruption in states. This is a fundamental fallacy of law. And this is what I would request everybody to read. Para after para of Bommai and Rameshwar says, you assume bad governance, central government is not a policeman for states. Assume corruption, central government is not a policeman for states. Assume misgovernance. So Rameshwar establishes that 2 months of defection, horse trading and money passing hands, 2 months, documented by Bhuta Singh, not a good ground for 356 squashed. The best panacea for allegations of horse trading is a floor test. Bommai and Rameshwar Karan say that the only panacea, the word only is a Supreme Court word, is a floor test. The governor already did 9 days, the central government actually aborted that what the Bommai and Rameshwar say is the only correct remedy.
I take your point.
And subsequently now, after 1 month of trying its luck, the central government has done nothing but make a virtue out of necessity.
But we're not any longer talking about the imposition of President's rule. We've begun talking about the defection of the MLAs and the nature of the order regarding them. And I want to stick to that because I want to question whether legally, and I want to put that to
academic now.
Well, yes or no, it's academic. It's still of great interest. The question I want to put to you, Sanjay Hegde, is this, that given that in July the Supreme Court could end up holding the disqualification wrong, that is arguably an outcome that could happen, was the court right not to stay the disqualification today? In fact, shouldn't it have allowed the vote to happen, but only to be considered when they've decided on the merits of the disqualification? Because now you could end up with a situation where these people have been disqualified, they can't vote, but in July the disqualification could be struck down and they'll have paid a price and a punishment for a wrong they've never done.
See, considerations of an interim order are different from the final relief. Ultimately, you have a situation where the speaker, who acts as a tribunal in disqualification matters, has disqualified them. That has been examined by a constitutional court, that is the Uttarakhand High Court, which by a detailed judgment has upheld the speaker's action. So that the Uttarakhand High Court judgment came today morning. 2 hours later, the Supreme Court was considering it at an interim stage. They probably did not find anything in the Uttarakhand High Court judgment which made such a major error of law that would prompt them to intervene and stay that judgment. So therefore, it may well be that in July or whenever the Supreme Court delivers its ultimate verdict, if they find something wrong in the speaker's action and then say that the disqualification was wrong and then requalify, then consequences could follow. Then these people come back into the assembly. They are free to do whatever else.
But my argument that these people have paid a price or a punishment when they could end up innocent doesn't apply.
No, it does not apply because they are members of an assembly. And ultimately, the assembly is more than those 9 MLAs.
And so the speaker has the authority and the right to do what he did.
Absolutely.
And if the High Court upholds it, that for the moment is the final position.
Absolutely.
What happens in July is to be seen in July.
Absolutely.
Let's then come to tomorrow's papers, because at the end of the day, there's a big question about how the Indian people will judge what's happened, what opinion they will form of this, what image will be communicated to them. TV Tonight, I think uniformly is suggesting this is a small victory for Mr. Rawat in Congress, a defeat and a setback for Mr. Modi and the BJP. Do you think that will be the line the papers take?
Well, you see, there is a possibility of Mr. Rawat winning by a whisker, given the way the MLAs are divided in the House. And there is a possibility of the BSP abstaining or doing something else. And there is one independent MLA about whom there is a doubt. But what you were proposing, that these 6 people who have been disqualified, that their vote be separately counted and kept. This was the original decision of Justice Dani.
That's right.
Which was done away with by the imposition of the President's rule. You see, please understand that. And secondly, may I say with all humility, that no MLA moves from one side to another out of altruism. No MLA.
So answer my question, how will the papers portray all of this, given what you're saying tomorrow, as a victory for Congress and a setback for BJP?
You see, I don't think that we can judge it in terms of victory and defeat.
I can guarantee headlines will do just that.
No, you see, editorially some people may write, but when we are reporting objectively the ground situation, we have to explain to our reader as to what does it mean.
So
You see,
tomorrow's
what is-
headline in the Hindustan Times won't say victory for Congress, defeat
I
for
wouldn't know
BJP.
that, because you see the point is that we don't editorialize headlines, but one last point. You are saying
We
that
try very hard, let's be honest.
In July, if these people are restored, even then what matters?
Yeah, but let's not go to July. I'm talking about the impact on the country tomorrow.
Because tomorrow the confidence vote will happen, and the government in place would not need to take another confidence vote for 6 months.
Absolutely.
And by that time, the end of the tenure, that was the end of the tenure of the assembly almost. So
Yeah.
what we are at a stage where that is not mattering politically even, that these people
except
getting
that,
restored.
Except that I asked you about how the newspapers like TV would condition
Well, you
the
see-
thinking of the country.
No, but if you are trying to expect me to tell you as to what we are going to do it tomorrow,
Not you,
it's
but
not
papers
possible.
as a whole,
But
not
some
you
papers
personally.
they may have editorial line to take, and they may take that line.
How much damage has this done to the image of the BJP? Or is that only a metropolitan perception? There's no doubt that the chattering classes in Delhi, Chennai, Mumbai, Calcutta probably all feel this has shown up the Modi government, and very badly. They probably all feel this has shown up the Prime Minister personally. But is that just a metropolitan concern? Does it matter across small town and rural India where the majority live?
I think it does. And I think nobody is coming out of this smelling of roses. Not the president, not the central government, not the state government, frankly. And I mean, I'm not a lawyer. My understanding of law comes from my class 9 civics book. But I'm really confused about how the Supreme Court could have put aside President's rule for 2.5 hours. When I was a child, I was told that the President is the highest authority in the land. Everything is done in his name. So how could the Supreme Court have countermanded what the President has said
Well,
or
on
done?
the grounds, this is an interesting thing, and let's bring Sanjay in, but surely the Supreme Court has the right and the power and even the duty to question the constitutionality of everything the President does. And the President usually, in fact, is only the name. The decision is the government. And therefore, if one way of questioning or examining the constitutionality is to set aside President's rule for 2 hours so that a floor test is held, is that an exaggerated interpretation of the powers of the Supreme Court, or a perfectly acceptable one?
It's perfectly acceptable, and you must remember that the Uttarakhand High Court struck down the imposition of President's rule. So thereafter, it's only the stay of the Supreme Court which is operating currently to restore President's rule. So the Supreme Court, in effect, is suspending its own stay for a couple of hours so that the floor test can be held.
Let me end this part by going back to you, Mr. Mittal, because I'm very conscious of the fact that the way this panel has been constituted tonight, you're the only one who speaks for the BJP. The others are independent, but their opinions may not necessarily be on your side, even though they're independent. Has this whole episode done damage to your party? Has it affected the standing of the Prime Minister? Remember, Aditi Fadnis believes it's hard to believe it hasn't.
See, if fighting the purchase and sale of MLAs by the Congress is losing a face, I rather lose a face. If murdering democracy by giving money to MLAs to vote for you, 25 lakhs and 50 lakhs, is upholding democracy for the Congress and a slap on face of BJP, I rather have the slap on my face. If all kind of nefarious activities to get money from the mafia of the mining and the excise people is saving democracy and a slap on BJP's face, I rather have the slap. The issue before the nation
You
and
are,
issue
Mr.
before the
Mittal,
assembly is,
a master
if a chief minister is going
politician. Mr. Mittal, you are a master politician. You remind me of that wonderful
if
book.
buying and selling of MLAs is justified for Congress, I have nothing to say.
You remind me of the title of Field Marshal Slim's wonderful book, Defeat into Victory. You've converted defeat into victory by the choicest explanation. My congratulations to you, sir. It's a lesson for all
I
of
think
us.
it's the morality and the probity which is more important than anything else.
All right, let's take a break at that point. When we come back, we're going to ask real hard politics. Can Harish Rawat win tomorrow? Could the BJP pull a rabbit out of the hat and do a miracle? And what about the morality of the night that precedes tomorrow's vote? Will we see frantic, or are we already seeing frantic horse trading? Is money changing sides as MLAs are being bought to ensure that one side or the other has a victory? A floor test tomorrow. How confident are you of winning? My key question is, will the PDF stay loyal to Congress, or will the P already questioning how they'll vote, are you in danger of losing critical support just when you need it?
Well, obviously, Karan, you're now talking of the future and therefore the unknown, but I fail to understand by what arithmetical acrobatics can a gap from 28 to 34 be bridged. I mean, we can speculate, one may go here, two may go here, BSP may not do this, that, but the real gap is 28 to 34. I believe it's an unbridgeable gap. I believe that the string of defeats, continuous and repetitive, from the pre-High Court level to the Supreme Court, has disheartened and disillusioned both the BJP camp and those who were on the borderline fence-sitters, as indeed the 9 MLAs. There was a lot of false hope generated by them, suggesting that they would get an inclusion of themselves as the 9 voters tomorrow. So all in all, only a miracle can really, and miracles do happen, I'm not saying they don't.
Can I interpret what you're saying?
Normal
Can I interpret what you're saying?
Indian democratic majority will rule.
Can I interpret what you're saying? You're not by any stretch of the imagination saying, I'm confident we'll win. What you're saying instead is, I can't see how the other side can win. That shows to me that you've got doubts about your own performance. Otherwise, your line would have been much more.
Which is a more sober way, which is a more sober way, a less ostentatious and flamboyant way, and a less jingoistic way of saying that we are winning. If I can't see how you will win, it means that I'm winning, but it's a more sober way of saying it. And I believe logic and sobriety is more important.
It's only, I can only accept that argument if I first accept that the leopard has changed its spots, and you haven't changed your spots at all.
36.
Sobriety rather than ostentation has never been your preference, but never mind, you have every right to change your colors today, particularly when you smile so sweetly. Let me make one correction, Mr. Mittal, before I come to you. You don't need 34, as Abhishek has put the bar. You actually only need 32. But you have only 28. What are your chances of winning? Can Satpal Maharaj, as they say, do a little bit of jadoo?
We need only 31, because in a house of 62, one is the speaker, the presiding officer is the speaker, so it is a contest of 61. Whoever has 31 has it.
No, hang on a second. What makes you think the speaker will vote for you? He's a congressman. The speaker is a congressman. What makes you so confident he'll vote for you?
It is only in case... No. He is not required to vote. It is only in case of a tie that he has a casting vote. So he doesn't vote otherwise. Now let me go further.
But if you get 31 and Congress gets 31, Congress, you need the speaker.
It can't. It is 62 ka house with one speaker, so only 61 people vote. Now that apart, let me just say, Mr. Singhvi has talked about the BSP and has talked about the PDP. Mr. Singhvi, if your own flock was not resentful of the corruption of Mr. Harish Rawat, why would he be distributing money left, right and center to all of them? The 12 of them get 25 lakhs, one gets 50 lakhs. If they were all so committed to the good governance of Mr. Harish Rawat and so disheartened by the defeat of the BJP and all, what was the necessity of giving money?
हकीकत ये है कि आप असलियत में ये कह रहे हैं कि अगर रावत साहब उनको पैसे दे के उनकी वोट ले सकते हैं तो हम दुगना दे के उनको अपने तरफ ले सकते हैं. Isn't that what you're relying on? We'll offer what they can't refuse and get the numbers we need.
Rawat Sahab is so apprehensive and so fearful of the revolt which has been brewing in the Congress that he is trying his utmost to keep them together by giving money, by offering them all kind of things, which to my mind has undermined and demolished democracy completely.
Okay.
And turning a blind eye to this nefarious
I'll come to you in a moment, Abhishek, don't worry.
This criminality, I would rather say.
Abhishek, say me, a critical question. Have you got the money to keep your own flock by your side? After all, Congress has only got the government in Uttarakhand to fund itself. I don't think your central coffers are overflowing at the moment. So have you got the money to buy the MLAs you need or to retain them?
Haven't already spent
Karan,
money?
I have been hearing ad nauseum in this program from beginning, and I have restrained myself. This constant refrain by the BJP about morality, ethics, money, purchase and sting. Now let me make it clear. I did not reply because under judgments of Bommai and this one, Brahmeshwar, a sting operation is irrelevant to 356 completely. So nobody knows the law if you talk of that. But now let me reply to that. This is nothing but entrapment attempts repeatedly. Everybody knows in India the amount of money the BJP spent as an opposition in 2014, the amount of money they spent in Bihar far exceeds the amount of money spent by the entire country, all political parties put together. Everybody knows the naked attempts being made to buy MLAs in
So your Chief
Uttarakhand.
Minister is in
Mr.
court on
Harish
camera.
Rawat is an innocent man who's been trapped because entrapment and sting are two separate.
All right, gentlemen.
Entrapment and sting are two separate concepts.
Mr.
I
Rawat
think,
first denied and now he agrees.
both of you have had adequate time to blacken each other's faces, and you've given as good as you've got. I'm now going to leave the two of you out of the discussion
we
for a
have
moment and
never,
come to my
there is
others.
nothing on record against us.
नहीं सर, अब आप दोनों की तू मैं पूरी हो गई है. Let's come back to my other guest. Sanjay Hegde, there is one real danger that we will see frantic last-minute horse trading. Whether money changes hands or not is anyone's guess, and most people would guess and say it will. Is there anything that anyone can do to prevent it?
No. It's a good time to be an MLA in Uttarakhand today. It's a very good time.
And therefore, each MLA knows that this is his opportunity in time?
These MLAs are anyway looking at an election in less than 9 months. The coffers and the watches have to be filled.
What's your feeling, Vinod? Money going to change hands fast and furiously? Could it be possible that the same MLA could be bribed by both sides without either knowing what he'll do?
I won't hazard a choice in this situation. You know, yes, of course, there is evidence against Harish Rawat in Uttarakhand today. But we have also seen Operation Kamal in Karnataka. And that was a very ingenious way of manipulating the numbers in the House by getting MLAs who were not with you to resign, So to bring down the effective strength of the House. I think that this whole destabilization game is more easily done in smaller states, where the numbers you require are way smaller, and thereby the money to be invested is also way smaller.
So do you agree with what he says, that this is the night for MLAs to make their money?
Of course,
both sides could bribe them
and
without...
and of course, because I challenge anybody to prove that if MLAs are crossing from one side to another, they're doing it out of altruism, or they're doing it in service of the people. They're serving themselves. You see, because elections have become so expensive and there is greed for money, so that if you have invested 2 crore in your election, you want to end up earning about 10 crore.
Let's come to brass tacks. Can Mr. Rawat win? He needs, as Mr. Mittal has correctly pointed out, 31. It's a House of 62. The Speaker doesn't vote unless there's a tie. So 31 is the majority. He's only got 27 of his own. There are 5 or 6 with the PDF, of whom 2 with the BSP are questioning. They're waiting for Mayawati to tell them, and who knows what Mayawati will say. In this uncertain situation, can Mr. Rawat win?
I would not like to hazard a guess, to be completely honest.
So you're not confident at all?
I'm not confident about who is going to win, what kind of government we are going to have, whether finally everything will implode and you will have an election well ahead of schedule.
Karan,
Anything is possible tonight.
Oh, sure.
But the one thing,
night of big sacks.
But the one thing that you're not confident of is the certainty of a Rawat victory.
No, I cannot say. I don't think. I would not hazard a guess about whether Mr. Rawat is going to win or not.
Abhishek Singhvi, after all of this, Mr. Rawat loses the vote tomorrow, people will turn around and say he fell at the last hurdle. A bit like one of those jumpers sprinting to the finishing line and falling over the last hurdle with the finishing tape in sight. Won't that be, for your party, a tragedy?
I agree.
Can you prevent it?
I agree, because
Can you prevent
it is something which will rob him of a well-deserved victory at the political post. By all legitimate and legal means, he has prevented it and will prevent it, and I'm very confident that he will win. But certainly, this is a political process. A political process is different from a legal process. But let me tell you, God forbid he doesn't win, he will still have the satisfaction of having verdicts in his favor and a floor test in the shortest possible time in the history of 356.
Yes, but
May
he
the
won't
best
have the
man win.
satisfaction of
It's really the
returning to
verdict
power,
and
which is the
essence
only
and the soul and
satisfaction he
heart of
wants.
Bommai and Rameshwar. And that, well, yes, we are speculating now. I have no reason to doubt his victory, but yes, you are right. It will be a very sad loss at the last post.
Let me put the opposite to you, Mr. Mittal.
I think that
If
spending
the
of money and buying of
BJP,
MLAs
if
would be
Mr.
most
Rawat were to
troublesome
be
for him, most
defeated,
disillusionment for him.
let me put this to you. If Mr. Rawat were to be defeated, how will you counter those who say, "Arey, BJP ne aur paisa khareed ke le liya"? How will you counter that?
The issue would not, the people will say the other thing. They will say कि इतना पैसा खर्च करने के बाद रावत फिर भी नहीं जीत पाया क्योंकि लोगों में और एमएलए में इसके खिलाफ कितना ज्यादा आक्रोश था. It's not an issue of BJP, it's an issue of the Congress. Because Rawat has been caught on camera giving money and not BJP. They have not even been able to name one single MLA whom BJP has approached or offered any kind of money. But here there are 12 MLAs who have taken money. There is one who has taken 50 lakhs. There are MLAs on camera saying all what Mr. Harish Rawat has done. So that disillusionment will come to Harish Rawat. Hi, मैंने इतने पैसे खर्च करे फिर भी नहीं जीत पाया.
I have to tell you, listening to your conversation, I say to myself, we should have all been MLAs. There's a lot more to gain from being an MLA than being a miserable journalist. But
I think this is debasement of politics and it is a new nadar the politics has been reduced to by Mr. Harish Rawat.
Very
It
quickly,
saddens me.
how much of a black mark is this whole process on Indian democracy?
Well, every democracy goes through that. If you've seen even the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln had to do quite a few deals to get it through. I don't. Money plays a role in democracy, especially electoral democracy. I don't see it
So
as
the
entirely back.
The corollary to your answer is that don't castigate yourself if corruption in politics is discovered in India because it exists everywhere.
Well, it does exist everywhere. At best, laws can minimize it. And one thing is, I think this episode gives teeth to the Bommai judgment. This is the first time that the courts have stepped in, and in future, politicians will have to be wary of the courts.
You know, when you say this judgment gives teeth to the Bommai judgment, you know what came to my mind? Is he talking of false teeth that you can take out every night?
No, the judges can clamp down anytime. It's not enough to have just the MLAs or the speaker on your side.
He has touching faith in the judiciary. He has to. They are the masters who pass the judgments on cases that he fights. But do you accept his line that we should take heart from the fact that this sort of thing happens in every democracy, that Lincoln also had to get up to backroom deals to pass the Emancipation Bill and therefore India is no worse? Or would you say that that's finding an excuse for our bad politics?
Well, you know, I don't think we live in paradise. We live among human beings, and human beings have frailties and failings. So I'm okay with that.
I'd like to another philosopher, much like him.
I'd like to see power politics. We enjoy watching that. It's a national sport in India. So
okay, so that's our conclusion.
This is political league.
Our conclusion is this is politics, this is entertainment, and at the end of the day, this is India. My thanks to all three of you for coming to studio. My thanks also to Abhishek Singhvi and Sudhanshu Mittal for joining me. And if you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.